Dunedin City Council. Our prayer today will be led by Venerable Geshe Donya from the Dage Buddhist Centre. Okay, as usual, we start with public forum, and can I invite Leanne Stenhouse up from Greater Green Island, wishing to address us on their work. Welcome, Leanne.
Hello? Sorry, I'm just wondering if our PowerPoint's there.
Something's changing on one.
Here we go. Right, thank you very much for your time today. The purpose of our visit, we really just want to make sure that you're all aware of what Greater Green Island does and how closely we've been working with the council. I'm Leanne Stenhouse, as you may already know, and this is my colleague Amanda Reid, and this is Steve Hayward, who's the chair of our committee. We also have Fred Jensen over there, who's our trustee local constable, who's also in our committee. Right, so as you'll see up here, Greater Green Island includes all of those suburbs. Green Island is the business hub for the area, so yeah, that's how all of those suburbs are included in the area. Can you click that? So Greater Green Island Community Network is made up of a committee of 8 people and 2 paid community workers, and we've got lots of great community volunteers as well. We have volunteers helping us with food share, with community garden, with we have community trust, care trust, people delivering newsletters, and yeah, people helping with events, Lilliput libraries, etc.
The aim of our committee is bringing people from communities together to foster a community which is self-reliant, responsive, resilient and sustainable. We were established in 2013, and in 2014 we were lucky enough to get funding from the Department of Internal Affairs for 3 years for a full-time community worker. So we've just finished that funding just recently. We became a legal entity and registered with Charities Commission, and we currently have 2 part-time workers, Leanne and I, for 30 hours per week. But we also have 20 plus regular volunteers working on all our projects from local community. One of the things that we really prioritise is being community-led and community-driven. So although we are the committee, we make sure that we don't do anything, we make sure that we are led by what our community tells us. So we do this through the last slide. We've had 2 extensive surveys, one in 2013 and one in 2016. And we also do consultation through our Facebook page, which we have 1,560 followers, and sometimes some of our posts are shared up to 20,000 times. So it's one way that we really do consult with our community. We also make sure that we attend community events, and we actually stand on the street a lot as well and talk to people. We also attend community groups and churches, making sure that they know that we're there to support them.
Okay, from the survey that we did, 2 of the main priorities that came out were the road safety and the Green Island Playground. Now, the road safety, we've had a really good relationship with DCC staff, particularly Jan Paulson at the road safety. We realised that, well, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in Green Island, and we realised a way to push this forward was that we actually did some of the consultation and found out what the community wanted. We were able to collate all this information and produce a plan of what the community wanted, which has been really useful to the staff. We could also share it around with the ORC, NZTA as well, so everyone had a full picture of what the community wanted, and yeah, it's really easy for staff to then move on. And from that work, we've also been approached by the urban design team, and we'll do a similar process again with letters of support, consultation, and get a really full picture of how we can work all the road safety and urban design work together. So yeah, it's been a win-win for everyone. The community gets what they want, and the staff get a clear picture of what the community wants, which enables them to move forward. So yeah, we've really appreciated working with them so well. And we've also done some work with bus advocacy, just with changes of routes, etc. But yeah, the other main priority was the playground, and yeah, through consultation, etc., we found out that there was a real need for an early preschool playground in the Green Island area. We've got a playground, but it's pretty dismal. It's old and it's not used. So yeah, we consulted where the community wanted the playground. We consulted what equipment they wanted, voting at the local supermarket, etc. We've had a really good response. To date, we've got $95,000 towards the playground, and we're eagerly awaiting the response from the Lotteries Community Facilities Grant in December. And all going to plan, we should be all go early next year. So yeah, that's really exciting. We've had lots of businesses and community groups helping.
And we do want to recognise the help from Ashley Reid and Shirley Stewart in that project. One of our aims also is to bring community members together to get to know each other and build relationships. So we hold community events which are always free and fun and for everyone. So we have had community morning teas, pop-up community services where we bring services out to the community so that everyone can access them rather than coming into town. School holiday activities, family fun days, community expo, artisan markets, community garden working bees, and fundraising events. I'd just like to say that this also matches with the DCC's social wellbeing strategy priorities, a city with connected people, cohesive communities, and quality lifestyles for all. We like to share information and keep everyone connected within our community, and we do this through a different slide again. We have a local newsletter, which is very popular now. That's monthly, that we put together and print with our funding. We have a website, which is greatergreenisland.nz, that tells the community about who we are, but it also promotes the health and social services in our community, recreation, sports, education, clubs and groups, businesses, churches, and community facilities. We have our Facebook page, which I've already talked about, and we also have a directory of what's in our community for people without the internet. This again meets the social wellbeing strategy, but it also matches the economic development strategy because we are promoting local businesses and trying to strengthen them.
We help support and facilitate the community garden, and we're also looking at we are helping a group set up a Green Island shed, which works like a bloke shed, but yeah, with blokes and females as well. But yeah, we're all for helping facilitate great community projects. And in conclusion,
We're making a positive difference in our communities and wish to continue to do so.
Our communities trust that we listen and get things achieved.
A lot of the work we do is alongside of DCC, and we've really made some really good relationships in there.
We are a non-profit charitable trust.
And our 3-year funding has come to an end,
We're applying for various funding grants to continue this work.
and we're looking for sustainable ways to keep us going: sponsorship, social enterprise, and funding.
And we really appreciate the support we've had from DCC and staff up to date, and hope to continue getting it.
Thank you. Are you happy to take questions?
Yes.
If there are any. Questions. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, and thanks for coming. Just a question around how the support you get, or not, from the Department of Internal Affairs in managing that transition. They come in and write cheques for 3 years and then leave you to it to fend for yourselves, or is there a more supportive process in year 3 where they help you put together a more, it just doesn't feel like a very long period of time to develop a sustainable model for anything. So I'm just wondering what degree of support they offer in that process. Thanks.
I think because we were the third community group in Dunedin to receive this funding, Brockville, North East Valley, and then us, they were more aware about talking to us from the beginning about setting up social enterprise and thinking from a start. But we had it in our minds right from the start, and we still haven't been able to do that within that 3 years. We've got ideas, but it's just such a short time period to achieve all of this, get people's trust, be out there and known. We need another 3 or 4 years to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a representative from DIA that comes to meetings regularly, and she monitors what we're up to and gets reports. And we also hosted the Associate Minister of Department of Internal Affairs about 2 years ago. She came to Green Island and came to the garden, the community garden we've got in one of our meetings. So, yeah.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you for your presentation and your initiative. When you talk about road safety, and congratulations on what you've achieved there, at those public discussions, was the issue of vehicle speed raised?
Through Green Island, yes. Yes, that's one thing that we are looking at with urban design as well, because obviously the roundabouts has been a real one. But yeah, the next stage of work will be through the main street of South Main South Road. So yeah, the speed is an issue, and we will be looking at possibly raised crossings, and we're working with road safety and urban design.
With the focus to reducing the speed?
Yes, with the focus to...
What about reducing the speed limit as well?
That may be a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we're very keen to make it more pedestrian safe.
Great.
We're also aware that the truck companies said that once these roundabouts are in, they will actually be diverting onto the motorway. They didn't want to do that before because it was too dangerous, but now they won't be going through our main street, so that's really awesome, which will help.
Councillor Gary.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation and congratulations on your work thus far. I was interested to know how you feel council could best support place-based community groups like yours going forward.
One thing that we would like to continue is a really good relationship with the DCC teams. So at the moment, we've got a really good relationship with the transport team, the parks team, and the urban design team. It would be really awesome if every community-led group could get this. It's taken us a bit of time to build those relationships. So having that access for all community groups would be really good. Also, having similar support as community boards in terms of civil defence information, which is increasing actually. We got some emails recently about the local flooding, and that was really good for us to get it out to the community, but maybe the training as well. And also we have a coalition of our community-led development groups, and we have discussed this, and it would be really amazing if we could get some financial support for 3/4 of a salary for a community worker in each community that is proven to be community-led. Yeah.
Or perhaps some support for the consultation that we are doing that is assisting staff.
Councillor Laufiso.
Thank you very much for your mahi and your ongoing commitment and your presentation. My first question relates to a strategic plan. Your report talks about the stuff that you're doing day by day, but what's your long-term plan and what's your 10-year strategic goals?
We've got to secure funding for these people to carry on the fantastic work they're doing for our community. So initially we started about 5 or 6 years ago. There was Constable Fred and myself and about 6 others in Green Island, and that's how we came to get these guys here. Well, it was actually other people before them, and then it was the 3-year term that the DIA gave us for the funding. So we just focused on that 3 years. But in year 2, we started looking at, well, okay, if we get this charitable status, then maybe we can start applying for grants, and maybe we can go longer than our 3 years. So at the moment, we're focused on completing the projects that we've actually started, so that people can see that actually we've carried out what they've wanted, and it's in place. And so we're getting there. It's just taking a little bit longer than we thought, but to have a plan for 10 years, well, it would be great if we could. We've probably got some ideas there. The community have already indicated some things, I guess, in their responses, but really we've got to focus on accounting for the money that we've got, spending that and on the projects that we said we would, and then looking
And we'll just continue looking for funds. We'll continue surveying the community to see what they want and create more. We'll find out what the next priorities are and just keep pushing forward as much as we can.
Thank you. And my second question is kind of related, but it's about succession planning and the fact that it's acknowledging the work of Presbyterian support and the fact that your staff from there, and what strategic planning is there to ensure that there will be paid staff who are not necessarily PSO staff?
Actually, we've started that process now. We've got our own bank account, and we are starting the process of doing our own payroll. And yeah, that's part of our next step in funding, which we got 23,000 from the Lotteries Community Fund, and that's part of our role, and we've got steps in place to make that happen within the next year. So we will be independent of Presbyterian Support Otago, but acknowledging we couldn't have done this without them. Yeah.
But they weren't actually in our original picture to start with, and so we've...
Councillor O'Malley.
Thanks very much for your presentation, and you've done some remarkable work in your community. I'm noting that place-based community groups are fulfilling some of the roles that a community board would fill if there was a community board in the area. And I don't really want to compare the two models because I think they do quite different things. But one of the things the community board obviously does is goes back to its community every 3 years to select who's going to be on that board. How are you establishing your relationship with your makeup of your organisation and your community in terms of the community's role in selecting who plays what roles you have in your group?
I guess that our community was, well, I came in later in the piece, but yeah, from my understanding, that the group was put together of passionate individuals and members of the community that wanted to make our community better. So I think we'll just be keeping that in mind, and I think it's just one of those things that the right people seem to come along. If we have volunteers that are really passionate, and yeah, we kind of sense they'll be good to have in our group. It's just more an intuitive thing, would be my feeling.
People can also ask to be on the group, so it's pretty open. We haven't really had to say no to anyone so far. People that want to contribute their time, we grab them.
Yeah, so we had the different sectors like education for myself, and then we had someone from the churches, a number of churches in Green Island, so we've got... We've tried hard to get someone from the medical, we've got a number of health centres as well. We didn't have a doctor on there for a while, but we do have a number of others who do a sort of a governance thing for us, so we've consulted them for legal things and other advice that we've needed that we weren't sure maybe where to go next. So it's not just our core 8. We had that basic group though.
And we're not going anywhere, so I hope it will continue in the future.
Any further questions? There are none. Thank you very much for your presentation. Our next submitter to public forum is Mark Brown of the Waikuaiti Coast Community Board. Wants to speak to us on the camping control bylaw. Welcome, Mark.
Good afternoon. I'm here to support the freedom camping as it is, with some suggestions of how we can make it better. 5 years ago, I was one of a committee that was put together to try and overcome the problems freedom campers were creating around the Dunedin area, as in camping in people's gateways, etc., etc. And the short of it was, out of that came that we suggested that there be specific areas for freedom campers to stay at, which has proved to work extremely well. In fact, it's worked too well. What we did learn is that there were a lot more of these campers than we'd ever imagined, and by having the specific areas, and as we saw, and just some areas just weren't big enough to handle them. So we need other areas to reduce the loading on those facilities, and I don't blame locals getting a bit grumpy when their local park is completely covered in camping vehicles and people. And it's at the Warrington we had 150 on one night. That was the peak. Well, we just can't handle that. But at least we knew where they were all doing their business, and I think that's what we mustn't forget that. The board has made, we made some efforts to find other areas, and one we came up with was talking to the manager of the Waikowait camping ground, and he offered to do a trial, but it needed some alterations to his site, but I think it would have been very good value for money. Unfortunately, this wasn't proceeded with. It's a council-owned property. It's already designated for camping, so it shouldn't be too hard to get that work. I suggest it's easy to copy the Lakes District Council and ban it, but we don't want to be like them. We want to be welcoming. We're not the same as them. We've got a different culture here in Dunedin, and if Dunedin's going to be this great little city we all talk about, let's welcome all its visitors. What we now know, there were at least 30,000 freedom campers visit Dunedin last year. Councillor Wiley tells me the average freedom camper spends approximately $130 a day. One doesn't have to be too clever to work out that this is a considerable input into our city, and I suggest a bit of an investment could easily increase this figure just by being nice to people. I must take to task the report on that the subcommittee did, which is on page 66 of your agenda, and point number 6 says that the majority of those that spoke at that meeting were in favour of option 1. That was not correct. Otherwise, or perhaps I was at a different meeting. But as I recall it, there was approximately 7 out of about 16 that favoured option 1. 3 of them were from one family, and that really isn't a majority. What we need to do is get real facts before making rash decisions. Otherwise, this will end us up back in the shit as we were 5 years ago. A document produced recently by Destination Dunedin says we need to attract young, educated people to our city. Well, here we have them. They're all there, but now we're telling them to go away. Let's just use this asset to our advantage. You never know, some of them may want to stay and a lot may want to come back. And I see there's a lot of potential there to use the contacts that we make with these people. They're from all over the world. In my business, we run a garden centre. We know not everyone's going to buy something that comes in, but we don't tell them to go away. You can normally pick the people who are going to do that, but we welcome everybody because we want them to come back, and our city is no different than that business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, councillors? Anyone have any questions? Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, Mark, I just wanted to clarify. You quoted me as saying $130 a day.
Yes.
Okay, and that was for all campers, including those in self-contained and non-self-contained?
Freedom campers, as I understood it, because you corrected my figures.
And no, actually, in that discussion we had, I corrected your cruise ship figures because you had said that the Freedom campers spend more than cruise ship visitors.
Correct.
And the cruise ship visitors was the $130 a day. So,
I thought you said they spent 150 and Freedom campers spent 130.
Any other questions? Councillor O'Malley.
You believe that if we go for option one today and change the bylaw to get rid of the designated spaces, that we will end up, that they simply won't come? And I guess...
They'll drive through. We see it already. People drive to Warrington because there's nowhere in the city area, and then they carry on north.
So we may lose them. Well, then maybe if that's an objective, maybe that will be what we'll get. Or do we suspect that, I suspect, and do you think that they will disperse around the city?
Oh, I have no doubt about it.
Thanks.
But they may not all do that, but others will drive through or just won't bother coming. We're in a perfect position to attract, to welcome these people because nobody else wants them. And it's not a big deal. All they want is a cold water tap and a toilet.
Councillor Vandervis.
You suggested that there was 30,000 came last year.
Yes.
The potential for even more of them, given that we only had 2 decent spots for them to stay, is, in your opinion, roughly what? Could that figure double if we provided facilities, do you think?
I have no idea, Lee. I don't know, but my own experience is if you look after your customers, they come back and they tell other people and more come back, but I don't know.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Alder.
Hi, I was just wondering, do you think currently we have the infrastructure in place for the numbers coming?
No.
Do you think, what therefore do you think we need to do?
Well, we need to duplicate it in what we have got in a number of places.
Okay. No further questions? Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Our next submitter is Mr. Weggery. Mr. Weggery, you there? There you are. Wishes to speak to us about the Dunedin Hospital rebuild options.
Bishop, I'd just like to, for a start, to introduce my colleague, Paul Schofield. Paul and I have something in common. We both were diagnosed with a prostate concern, and we both had to fund our own biopsy. Paul went on to get surgery from Mercy through the hospital when SDHB finally came to their senses. and he is supporting me today in representations, and obviously will be open to questions at the end of this presentation. So thank you for that. Councillors, you all have a copy of my presentation, so I'll just present it to you and invite you to follow. Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for this opportunity to speak this afternoon on a topic that is vital to the ongoing health of the city and surrounding Otago Southland. Since you passed a resolution in February this year supporting the retention of a rebuilt hospital within the CBD, subsequent events have seen a change of government to a Labour, New Zealand First, Greens coalition, and the appointment of one of our own local Labour electorate MPs, Honourable David Clark, as Minister of Health. It is heartening to read on reflection that during the recent campaign, Dr Clark promised that under Labour there would be built a central city hospital. Because of the benefits of having educational and health facilities side by side and close to cafes and green spaces, a quote from him on the 11th of September. In a previous statement, Dr Clark said the Southern District Health Board's involvement in the rebuild was too limited, and the Ministry of Health had too much to say. This should be, he said, a locally driven process. He subsequently said in September that this process would be supported by a plan to set up a group with DCC, OIC, Ngāi Tahu and the University/Otago Polytechnic, presumably to liaise with SDHB, although whether or not it replaces the Southern Partnership Group is yet unclear. It was heartening to read his statement in June this year that Dunedin, Otago and Southland need to be assured that they will have a full rebuild that provides quality care in a central city location to ensure that they can continue to attract and retain the best staff. Under the radically changed political landscape, the city now has a good chance to achieve these worthy goals. But it begs the question, what has the SDHB been doing in the meantime? In June 2017, the indicative business case for Dunedin Hospital rebuild was released. And from a heavily redacted public copy, and you have their Appendix A instead of paper extracts, you will see the following facts emerge. 1, a new hospital on site, which they call Option C or D. Or 2, a new hospital on Wakari site, Option E. 3, DHB embarking on a clinical service change program with, I quote, dedicated executive and clinical leadership positioned to drive the change through. Number 4, a number of initiatives planned and underway include development of a primary and community healthcare strategy and also a hospital admission reduction program. Recently, the SDHB went around Otago with 3 public meetings to present an update of its strategy and action plan, and the Dunedin one was held on Tuesday the 10th of October in the Otago Museum. I went along and sitting in front of Councillor Elder, immediately picked up, as she will recall, on the ambulatory care hubs or community care health hubs that they were proposing as part of their new integrated healthcare strategy. In answer to my question from the floor, WellSouth Chief Executive Ian Makara confirmed that these were proposed not only in rural areas of Otago Southland, but Dunedin City as well, raising the question, how do they affect the size of the rebuild? And because he confirmed that part charging for minor surgical services was being contemplated, where was the guarantee that appropriate funding would follow any patient having to be referred to these new providers, particularly older patients on limited or fixed incomes? This revelation seems contrary, councillors, to the policy announced in the SDHB Strategic Health Plan, that's their long-term plan, and you have their Appendix B set of extracts. That I quote, the DHB will work with community and hospital clinicians to provide a wider range of services in community settings as appropriate and provide these services at no cost to patients. As you can see from the attached Appendix C set of extracts, the split will eventually reach 50-50 by 2030. These revelations were quite startling and concerning to all those present and confirm the present thinking of the Southern Partnership Group, who indicated in the 2017 IBC that the difference between options C and D is a health hubs providing ambulatory services in the community. Community health hubs, councillors, are not new and emanate from an UK NHS idea to meet the increasingly complex needs of an ageing population and feature in the SAPIA Research Group Strategic Assessment Report 2016. You have a copy there of Extract C Appendix D. The nearest model for my research to us, would you believe, already exists in Christchurch. And you will note the Pegasus Medical Centre in Madras Street and the various charging services it is now providing. Have a look at Appendix E, set of extracts. They're quite revealing. If this trend is allowed to continue, then my pick, my local pick, is that Mornington Medical Centre, with its payroll, wait for it, of 18 doctors and support staff, is poised to bring integrated health care to Dunedin. But at what expense to the Dunedin hospital rebuild? And what future expense to senior citizens on limited or fixed incomes? That is why I would urge Council to make a submission on the SDHB draft strategy that is open for public consultation at the moment, that seeks, from the Council's point of view, from our point of view, more acceptable solutions to our local health needs, and asks our new Minister that you guys be part of that team that determines on our behalf the size and ultimate function of our newly rebuilt teaching hospital. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Vanders.
You quoted Dr. Clark as promising that under Labor there would be a new central city hospital having educational and health facilities side by side and close to cafes and green spaces. What did you understand those green spaces to be?
I think Councillor Vanders, he was thinking of the many people who work in the hospital who would appreciate in their sort of off time being able to get out of the hospital and do the things that they do in their downtime. It's a semi-serious comment, but it adds to the attractiveness of a central city rebuilt site.
But your understanding of what he meant by green spaces, do you know where these green spaces are?
Well, I'm sure that he's thinking about the various green spaces that we have around the hospital at the moment. There may not be as many as we'd like, but certainly it is attractive, and in terms of the rebuild, there may be scope to build more. I don't know. That's something for the group to consider in the future.
Oh, so your understanding of green spaces is the park bench and tree on the corner of Hanover Street and Great King?
That at the moment it may be, but hopefully it may be a bit more than that.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Elder.
By implication from what you are saying, are you highly suspicious of small hubs in the community and sneaking costs associated with that?
Sam, and I'd just like to invite Paul, my colleague, to give a comment because he emailed me and I thought his summation was very good.
Oh, thank you. I was concerned about this. I don't have any clinical knowledge or any expertise to speak on how effective the hubs would be, and I wouldn't have a problem with the idea if they remain as an integral part of the hospital. But what I see here is a raft of for-profit, mini-private hospitals being set up, and I believe it's being pushed through at an unacceptable haste. And I really don't think that the people of Dunedin are aware of what's being done. It's a return to the privatisation of our hospital service that was first started way back in the 1990s, in my view.
The next question is, if those costs could be, we could manage those in the sense of saying, hey, you can't do that, do you see some benefits of having local hubs?
My concern, Councillor Elder, is that there's no guarantee that the funding will follow the provider. I think that is a huge question. I think it lays it open to the Pegasus-type operation, as Paul has said, to come in and make lots and lots of money at our health expense.
Thank you.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Just following on from the last two questions about creeping privatisation or privatisation, would it be fair to say that you, and thank you for the alert, most helpful comments, would it be fair to say that your concern, or a major part of your concern, is the global funding directed at Vote Health?
My personal view, Councillor Benson-Pope, is that I lay a lot of hope in the promise by the new government that they will increase the Vote Health and that a lot of it will go through to where it's best needed. That's at the front line.
Okay, thank you. And the other part of your submission and the last part and the comments that your colleague just made relates to the change in focus that we've seen across many areas of the community to encourage the privatisation of what previously were public services.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Malley.
Thanks for your submission. I just want to clarify the relationship between these hubs and the funding model. And I guess it's more or less what Councillor Elder was saying, I just want to repeat it. We're going to be the hospital for all Otago and Southland, so some of those models are suggesting that patients be treated and then returned back to their community. So if we can achieve that, but also maintain the funding status so that stuff that is free now remains free, would you be satisfied with that structure?
Councillor Matt, if you can retain the basic core services in terms of public funding that we enjoy at the hospital now, I don't see the problem. I'm sure Paul doesn't either. If you have community hubs because of geographical distances in the rural areas that provide a public funded service, fine. What surprised me was for a city our size, and Paul and I have talked about this, SDHB's proposal to install community health hubs within Dunedin City. I asked that specific question and the answer I got was yes. WellSelf are definitely contemplating those. That to me was a great surprise. I did not see the need, and my concern was that that's going to detract from the size of the new teaching hospital.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Wiggery, Mr. Schofield. Appreciate your submission. Now, councillors, we are running behind in some ways, so I'm going to move from the chair that we extend public forum by half an hour because we need to. Seconded Councillor Staines. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Our next submitter is Catherine Spencer, or two submitters, Catherine Spencer and Francis Ross, who wish to speak to us about the High Street co-housing development. Welcome. Voice activate.
Oh, right, okay. We're pleased to be here today, and I'd like to give my thanks first on behalf of the Co-Housing Project for partnering us through the purchase of 2 social housing units. We remain absolutely delighted, and we're interested in strengthening that existing relationship. We're here to present you an idea about affordable equity schemes, and we would like to begin with a conversation about the possibility of developing such a scheme here in Dunedin and the benefits it might bring the wider city as well as the council. Affordable equity schemes allow households on a low income to purchase dry, healthy homes in cases where they can bring a large percentage of equity or raise a mortgage but fall short of the total cost. The affordable equity provider supplies the shortfall. Where's the thing? So, on this example, a person is able to, or family is able to raise through a mortgage or borrow from family or from the sale of assets, or from the sale of a rundown house, about 75% of the cost, including a deposit. The affordable equity provider supplies the shortfall. And once the householder has paid off their mortgage, the provider and householder have a further conversation as to whether the householder will take out a further mortgage to repay the provider or whether the provider leaves their share in. And there are a number of these schemes operating throughout the country, but none in Dunedin. And there are a number of ways to recalculate the repayment options and to calculate the repayment portion. So our housing needs in Dunedin are quite different from the areas where the other schemes operate. It's well known that Dunedin has a surfeit of cold and damp houses. The housing stock is often old and hard to retrofit good insulation and heating to bring these houses up to World Health Organisation standards. The health and well-being of the wider community is compromised. There are many benefits of such a scheme. You get more people into warm, healthy homes, you get better health and therefore social outcomes. It is a way to look at the larger issues of housing stock renewal within the city and the possibility of addressing implications of climate change. It addresses housing affordability issues for those on low incomes but who do not qualify for regular social housing. In contrast to regular social housing, the provider's dollar goes much further. For example, if a house were $400,000 for regular social housing, you'd get one family in that. With this kind of scheme, you would get 4 families into a warm, dry house. In contrast to regular social housing, the provider ceases to be the landlord, and the day-to-day management of such responsibilities is negligible. The purchaser has a sense of ownership and is therefore more likely to maintain the property well, thus retaining its value. The purchaser is responsible for all outgoings, or a percentage of, the rates, insurance, maintenance and any other costs, and this is cheaper for the affordable equity provider than regular social housing. We think such a scheme could be an important strand in Dunedin's desire to build a future-focused and resilient city. In the big picture, it could be part of the solution for solving some of South Dunedin's issues around climate change. It certainly would be a way forward to begin renewing Dunedin's dilapidated housing stock and getting more people into cosy homes, which we know is at the heart of the Council's housing policy. So why are we telling you about this? In part, it's because we are part of this community and care about the shape of this city. And secondly, we would like to offer you an opportunity to trial such a scheme within the co-housing project. We believe there are benefits to the Council in exploring such a model, especially within the parameters of a small project, rather than embarking on a citywide project should it see fit to do so. So at co-housing, since 2013, when the land was first purchased, building costs have risen significantly. Therefore, we would like the Council to consider strengthening its partnership with the project by facilitating an affordable equity scheme. Most importantly, it would safeguard the vital community aspect of the project, with 4 households who potentially may not be able to proceed, but have been involved since the start of the project and have contributed much to where the project is today and its community. It is this community aspect which differentiates co-housing from other intensive housing developments and make it much stronger and a more positive force in the wider community. Using co-housing as a prototype has further benefits. It's on a small scale and therefore we can work out the mechanics of a scheme and fine-tune them with people who are innovators and work well together. It's in an environment where there's good community support, where there are good safeguards for payment of other costs such as insurance, where the body corporate is responsible for all external maintenance, and there's highly likely to be very much of that in the first 20 years. Furthermore, the support of an affordable equity scheme would facilitate a future-focused way of living and building and add to Dunedin's reputation as a place of innovation. There are disadvantages for council. It would require some time and thought to be put into its development. It would need some money up front, though far less than buying social housing units. It may have insurance implications for the council. The 4 unit holders have chosen modest dwellings to suit their needs, their families and some people on fixed incomes, and are entitled to community services cards. Our suggestion is for the council to consider ring fencing, say up to $300,000 to may be made available to these unit holders. They'd apply for the minimum amount needed to get them over the line. And we're very happy to work with council staff to develop criteria and other mechanics. And in the paper that's been circulated, we had already tabled some criteria a number of years ago when we were engaged in conversations with the staff. So we hope to conclude sale and purchase agreements by early December, and so there is some urgency in this matter. We very much look forward to the opportunity of working with the DCC if the scheme is developed, and to see the social and economic diversity of our community strengthen and continue into the future. And Francis Ross and I are now happy to take any questions.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Steadman.
Thank you. Just wondering, have you approached any other entities in regard to AES?
We have had conversations earlier with PSO and with the Salvation Army head office in Wellington. We've had discussions with I can't remember the name of it, but a nationwide community health provider who looks after people with special needs in the community. Those are the main ones. I've also spoken to the other affordable equity schemes in the country, but they operate only in Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington and Queenstown.
So the response hasn't been that great so far?
Well, they don't operate in Dunedin is the problem.
I'm talking about the earlier ones.
And the earlier ones, no, they have no money for either social housing. So a lot of this was in discussion when we were looking at the social housing component of the co-housing project, and none of the organisations we talked to had money to buy social housing in Dunedin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation and your vision and commitment to this. And you might have partially answered this, but I just want a bit of clarity on a combination of co-housing and the affordable equity scheme. Are there other successful models, other parts of the country?
Yes, there's the New Zealand Housing Foundation, which operates in Auckland and a little bit in Christchurch. There's also Dwell Housing Trust in Wellington. And there is the Queenstown Lakes District Housing Trust, which operates in central Otago.
So it's a good solid foundation is really what you're saying, with plenty of experience behind it.
Yes, and they're all slightly different, and they're slightly different how they operate. And I was speaking to the woman at Dwell earlier in the week, and they've sort of come to the end of what they're able to do in terms of ongoing affordable equity buy-in options, because their funding has been withdrawn. So,
can I ask which model is the closest, or which example is the closest to what you're proposing here?
possibly theirs and the New Zealand Housing Foundation. I think the Queenstown Lakes operation works often at buying the land and then leasing it back as their part of the affordable equity, but that's not an option that's going to fit our model here.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Elder.
I was just wondering, thanks for the presentation, by the way, but just wondering if Housing New Zealand had any interest in this, given the housing crisis that is out there at the moment.
Sorry, I omitted to say that we'd also spoken to them. So likewise, it's a no card in Dunedin.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you for your presentation. Moving on, the next submitter is Steve Walker, who wishes to speak to us about the Wildlife Hospital Trust.
Must be serious, we have t-shirts.
Clearly brought the whole trust with you. Welcome. Grab one of these, please. Don't fall off.
Oops. Okay. We're here today to formally introduce the Wildlife Hospital Dunedin to full council, bring you up to speed to how we got to this point, particularly during the last 6 months, and describe the relationship with the Otago Polytechnic, and to flag the fact that we will be asking Council to support the Trust over the next 3 years via the LTP. I'm sure you know who I am. I have the pleasure of co-chairing the Trust with Andy Cunningham. Also here is Jordana White, our Secretary, and Mike Waddell, representing the Otago Polytechnic, and I'm sure a few of you know Mike also. Before handing over to Andy, I just want to highlight the fact that when the hospital opens its doors on January the 15th, it will align very well with the Council's strategic framework. The hospital will touch many of the 8 key strategies. In fact, your own website, talking about your strategic framework, mentions that we need to be vibrant and creative, sustainable and resilient. We are a city of learning, and we value and protect our natural environment. So, Andy, how did we get here?
Thanks very much, Steve. This project was an idea begun by Dr. Lisa Argilla back in 2013. Many of you may know Dr. Argilla. Even if you're not sure about her, you will have heard of the Emperor Penguin Happy Feet. She was the veterinarian who was on the television for that period of time. Wellington Zoo did a review of the equivalent advertising spend on Happy Feet. It came out at $40 million benefit to Wellington Zoo, which was rather exciting. In 2015, Lisa Argilla met Jordana. The project gradually developed into 2 pilot projects. These were temporary hospitals, primarily looking at penguins, with some financial support from the Yellow-Eyed Penguin Trust. Those 2 pilots proved the need because they demonstrated that by getting first responder engagement with sick or injured animals, the success rate was considerably better than flying them to the North Island for treatment at the Wild Base Hospital or the Wellington Zoo Hospital. In 2017, early 2017, I joined the project team and we began a rigorous process of planning and gradual expansion of the project team. And in May of 2015, we took that plan to May of 2017, I beg your pardon, we took that to Dr. Phil Kerr at Otago Polytechnic. Phil was rather enthusiastic about it and got his staff to begin to engage with us to develop the whole thing, not only in terms of treating the sick animals, but also in terms of what that hospital could do for the veterinary nursing school at Otago Polytechnic. And on August the 31st of this year, the Polytechnic and the Wildlife Hospital Trust signed a memorandum of understanding to work together. And now Mike, who is from Otago Polytechnic, will tell you what the benefits to the Polytechnic are.
Thank you. So, the benefits are that it continues to add more value to the Polytechnic by encouraging our students to look beyond veterinary nursing. And it links well with the whole tertiary precinct. We have a capacity at the Polytechnic in terms to be able to provide the actual housing of the hospital itself. So our partnership is about the provision of a location, provision of staffing support. But more importantly, it is about adding the extra value that we would not be able to do if it wasn't for the actual dimension of the hospital itself. This takes our students' experience to a new level, and it provides a greater opportunity across the whole Polytechnic as one organisation. And it also links really well with the university in terms of, naturally, the Department of Zoology, therefore further research opportunities as well. But on top of that, of course, it goes beyond the hospital and the care, if you like. It goes into the whole ecotourism, which is very important from a city perspective, but also for what we teach from an applied learning perspective. So it has a real plus win as far as the Polytechnic is concerned.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Just in closing, I'd like to thank the Mayor and Council for hearing us today. Remind you that we would be keen for Council to financially support us in the initial 3 years. Just a reminder again, your strategic vision is to place Dunedin as one of the world's great small cities. I think it's there already, but so we see the Wildlife Hospital development as helping you towards that goal. And I guess we'd encourage any questions related to what we said, the key dimensions handout, and our beautiful brochure, which I think you all have in front of you. Yeah.
Questions, Councillor Gary.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation and your commitment to this really exciting proposal. I was wanting to clarify and just ask you to explore a little further about the ecotourism that you see related to this. I have thoughts about that, but I'm really interested to hear what you have to say.
I guess the answer to that is twofold. First of all, there's the defensive aspect of it, inasmuch as the hospital will be preserving wildlife on which our current ecotourism businesses depend very heavily, which does form quite a considerable amount of value to the local economy. On the second side, one of the things that we haven't yet touched on, but is on the key dimensions sheet, is that Otago Polytechnic has committed to constructing a brand new hospital within about 12 to 24 months, depending on how quickly the architects can do their work. As part of that, we're hoping to create a direct micro-ecotourism operation at the hospital, and we will be looking for partners within that. Now, there is another facet to the micro-ecotourism which we're looking at potentially, and we had a conversation with Dr. Bidrose about that a short while ago, and that is that up at the Botanic Gardens aviaries, there is an aviary that is free and available for the rehabilitation of woodland birds. So once they come out of the hospital, the birds could be put into that aviary, subject to approvals from groups like Ngāi and others, so that they could be rehabilitated within the city grounds. And so people could see the hospital activities, they could see the rehabilitation activities. And that gives a lot of people, especially local people, not just tourists, a sense of their own community value.
Do you see the opportunity for visitors coming from other countries who are really keen to get involved in some way in this kind of activity? Do you see any pathway for that happening through this proposal?
Definitely. The whole idea of getting people to come into the hospital and have a look around is that they will gain an empathy for the beautiful fauna that we have in this country. We haven't definitely fixed on that. We've had conversations with DOC around the access issues, the consent issues. They seem to be pretty positive about it because these kind of displays, the way that we would do it is very much in evidence, for example, at Wellington Zoo. So it may take a while to get through the process, but I don't think there'd be a problem there.
Thank you very much.
Councillor O'Malley.
It's just a quick clarification around the funding. You are going to eventually become self-sustaining, right? So this would be a temporary funding thing and you're not going to be coming back at years 7, 8 and 9?
You're talking related to council?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we fully envisage that we will ask only for 3 years, and in part of that package will be an implicit promise that you will not see us again. Let's put a smile on your face.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Elder.
Wondering, you've had the first few weeks of your campaign. How's your public response been so far?
Again, there's an answer in two parts. The first part is the public campaign is exactly on track to achieve the goal that we'd hoped for. The second part is that underneath the surface there are a number of corporates that are also talking to us, and we've had a couple of commitments already, and we have about six outstanding still, all of whom have given us positive indications.
And sorry, further to that, we already have 5 firm commitments from corporates and philanthropists. Yeah.
Any further questions before we're convinced that you don't need us at all? Right, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
T-shirts are for sale, $50.
Right, our final submitter today is Anna Parker, who is going to speak to us about valley projects. Anna, welcome. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou katoa, talawhalawa, greetings. My name is Anna Parker and this afternoon I'm representing the Valley Project. Today I have Rory White, the Valley Project's Accessibility Advocate, and Rob Thompson, our Board's Deputy Chair, with me. I'd like to acknowledge all those who have spoken today, especially our colleagues from Green Island, but also for all of those who have shared their visions and their aspirations for our city. Thank you for your time today and a very full agenda. We do appreciate it. And also our thanks to the DCC staff who supported us in attending the meeting today. I'm hoping to achieve 2 things with you in my 5 minutes, and that is to, 1, to profile the Valley Project for you, to let you know what we are, who we are and what we are about, and also to convince you that investing in place-based, community-led development projects across our city is a wise and clever investment, and that you might take that commitment to your long-term plan deliberations. Who are we? We can start flicking through photos whenever you would like, whoever is managing the technology. Thank you. The Valley Project is a community-led development project based in North East Valley, serving the communities that flank both sides of the valley. Our aim is to build community connections and promote the well-being of our local families and whānau. We build on a long tradition of community organising in North East Valley and have been in operation for the last 8 years. For 5 of those years, we were a pilot project receiving community-led development funding through the Department of Internal Affairs. $1.3 million was invested in our community over those 5 years. This investment has seen a derelict and empty shopping district transform into a vibrant community shopping centre where businesses are unique, locally owned, and where business confidence is high. The school roll of North East Valley Normal School has more than doubled, almost tripled in the last 5 years. Our school principals report that the significant social issue of transience has almost disappeared. Our whānau choose to stay put in our community. Although the deprivation index remains high at 7, our people report feeling resilient, connected, and report a strong sense of belonging. Our recent research shows that 90% of our community value our activities as important or as very important to their sense of community and well-being. Through our many services, projects and events, we achieve community outcomes under several of the DCC's strategic plans. I have provided you with a handout that, where I have done some analysis to show you exactly where our activities fit under just a few examples of your strategic directions. It is our belief that this form of community-led, place-based organising is an efficient way to achieve such outcomes. We do and achieve what you see on the handout before you, all of this with just 1.4 staff. That's 1.4 FTE. We managed to do all this work through mobilising over 10,000 volunteer hours each year. Also attached to your handout is a profile of 2 case studies and numbers. One is a significant priority for our community, which is food security. There's some numbers there that explore the fact that we, this year alone, have provided 20,000 meals in our community, and that's a community-led project where those families who are receiving those meals, receiving that food, which would otherwise go to landfill, are doing that for themselves. There's also some numbers there relating to the Valley Voice newsletter that connects 3,600 of our homes each month. All this community building work will not survive and flourish if we're not able to access some core operating support ongoing. The point of showing you these numbers while our people flash on the screen is to say that community engagement is great. Mobilising and activating community engagement and volunteer power in our city's vision is an efficient use of resources from our perspective. The Department of Internal Affairs investment in our communities needs to be enhanced rather than lost. Place-based organising and development is what we think, and what the research shows us, is high impact. It enhances well-being, connection, cohesion, inclusion and resiliency. It celebrates our unique identity and place and activates local economic development. We can't afford as a city for the Valley Project or for any of our other place-based groups to fail. We call upon you to put in new investment, new resources into communities of place across our city, to not just redistribute existing community resources. We believe that vibrant and connected neighbourhoods is what will truly make Dunedin a great small city. Thank you for your time, and we'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you. Congratulations. The Valley Voice is certainly one of the more interesting documents we get to read.
Right.
And I just want an assurance we're going to continue to receive it, please.
Absolutely. As long as we can raise more than $4,000, that is all we managed to raise this year to keep it going.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you very much for your presentation today, and congratulations on all that you've achieved. And I note, I was taken with the statement, great small cities have strong communities, because certainly you've demonstrated that. So my question is, besides funding, what else can council do to support place-based community groups like yourselves?
We believe that, just as our colleagues from Green Island talked about, it's the collaborative relationship with council departments that really enhances all of our work, and we really value the relationships that we do have, and we want to continue to foster that culture of collaboration and doing together rather than working against each other.
If I could follow on from that. It's also about capability building. And traditionally, the models of community funding is that we fund a lot of groups of good people doing good things, rather than investing in building capability within our communities, so that people have the skills and abilities to be able to manage their own communities. So, for example, we've been doing a lot of work trying to develop social enterprises. One of these is the Valley Card, you might be aware of. And this is a local enterprise where people purchase a card for $20, and it's a discount card for all of the local businesses and services in our community. And so I've already, I bought my card, I've already got quite a bit of value from the savings from the businesses. But the businesses also benefit, they get value because they get local people, they get more customers, local people using those. And all of the money that's generated from the card go back into funding community activities and support. So really it's hitting the four bottom lines of a social enterprise. It's achieving financial value for the residents and people who work in the valley, for the businesses and also for our community. It's achieving social value because it's enhancing relationships. People have relationships with local businesses. It's environmental value because people are less likely to use their car by using local services. And it's achieving a purpose. It's bringing our communities together. And this is a project that can be replicated anywhere in the city. So Caversham or South Dunedin can have their own card. But these kind of things aren't possible unless you have people with the capabilities, skills and resources. So what we're encouraging is that wise investment is made in our communities to build that capability so that communities can be self-sufficient. I mean, our long-term goal is to be completely self-sufficient and actually be generating money, and hopefully one day the council might make a submission at one of our local meetings asking us to fund one of their projects.
Thank you, and I concur with my colleague, Councillor Benson Pope, about the Valley Voice, a great read.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou, and I'm pleased that you mentioned social enterprise, Dr. Thompson. While I don't necessarily agree with the view some hold that it's the answer to all of our problems, it is a useful tool to have in helping to address some of our challenges. To that end, what support or encouragement have you received from Council's Economic Development Unit in terms of helping develop neighbourhood scale business projects, the likes of which you've highlighted just now?
Anna might be able to answer that better, but we're currently running a Co-Starters course. There's been a partnership with Co-Starters, which we're running in the Valley. So a lot of local people are learning the skills to develop their own local businesses.
We have had a couple of meetings in different contexts with individuals from the Economic Development Unit, but we haven't necessarily been able to progress action from those meetings at this point.
Thank you.
Any further questions?